Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida talked up his country's growing cooperation with the United States as he met today with President Joe Biden in Hiroshima. Mr. Biden affirmed the unity that exists between the allies on a number of fronts, including holding Russia accountable for the Ukraine war.
As you said back in January when you were at the White House, I think the quote is we face one of the most complex environments in recent history, security environments. And I couldn't agree with you more. But I'm proud that the United States and Japan are facing it together. And, we stand up for the shared values, including supporting brave people in Ukraine as they defend their sovereign territory and holding Russia accountable for its brutal aggression.
本日はジョーと G7 広島サミットについて最後のすり合わせを行いたいと思っています。そしてサミットでは日米ともに掲げる法の支配に基づく自由で開かれた国際秩序を守っていくというG7 の揺るぎない意思を示したいと思っています。
Mr. Biden and Mr. Kishida met ahead of the Group of Seven summit, which starts tomorrow. G7 leaders are expected to touch on a range of issues during their three-day meeting. The war in Ukraine and China are likely to be high on the agenda. Earlier, the White House also said economic security and ensuring diversified supply chains would be emphasized. For more, let's cross to Michio Ishida. She is in Hiroshima. Mitch, are the talks between Mr. Kishida and Mr. Biden largely ceremonial? I mean, seeing as Japan is hosting the G7 leaders, or perhaps is there more to this meeting?
Well, we hope that there will be more to this meeting than being just ceremonial. Now, Mr. Kishida said the main purpose of the bilateral meeting with Mr. Biden is to make sure they're on the same page ahead of the G7 summit, which takes off on Friday. Now, it's in particular on the rule of law, free and open world order. Now, this meeting takes place when Russia's invasion of Ukraine is still continuing, and many countries around the world are hurt. Now, the situation in Ukraine is one of the highlights, and Mr. Biden said in his opening remarks during his meeting with Mr. Kishida that he wants Russia to take responsibility for the invasion of Ukraine, and he is committed to cooperating with his G7 members. Now, Mr. Kishida has been stating the situation in Ukraine could be the East Asia tomorrow, and Japan is the only Asian country represented in G7, so he wants to make the Asian voice heard. Now, one is the situation on the Taiwan Straits, the East China Sea, South China Sea, North Korea's missile launches and its nuclear threat. And Mr. Biden's backing is vital to this.
Mitch, world leaders have already begun arriving in the Western Japanese city. What are Mr. Kishida's priorities for this meeting?
Well, Mr. Kishida will formally welcome world leaders at Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park. Now, he wants them to also visit the Peace Memorial Museum. Now, this museum portrays the devastating reality of a nuclear attack. With death, damage caused by the atomic bomb of 1945. Now, as you know, the United States dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and 140,000 are reported to have died that year. Even if they survived, they may not have lived long, or they've had multiple problems with their organs. The U.S. stance is that the atomic bomb ended World War II. So Mr. Biden is likely to be cautious about visiting the museum. For Mr. Kishida, it's really important that many of the leaders learn the devastation that a nuclear weapon would cause. He wants to create a momentum for nuclear disarmament and nuclear non-proliferation. And why? Because Mr. Kishida is from Hiroshima. His constituency is there, and it's his life work to work towards a world without nuclear weapons. Now, other important issues to be discussed, reaching out to the global south, in particular these countries suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic and from the war in Ukraine. The G7 nations should come together to contribute to their development and climate change.
Mitch, thank you for giving us the look ahead to these meetings. Michio Ishida there reporting for us live in Hiroshima.